can clap if you want. I want you to get to know members of the choir. They'll And Julie Beck is on the piano. Let's give her a big hand. Robert, are we ready to start? We do have one more. Okay, is that all right? Here we go.
Seminar. My wife and I represent the Kimber Academy, and Brother Kimber is, as you well know, also represents the Jefferson Center. We would like to thank the choir for singing that great introduction music, and we would like to is there any questions any of you'd like to ask before we get started? Okay, that's great. The Kimber Academy is going to sing another song for us, conducted by Ralph McAfee.
We did that, Bob.
You did it?
Yeah, we're good.
You're good? Okay, they're good. All right. And so we'll move on to the invocation by Kimball Weaver. And then we will have Don Anderson, who will lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And then we'll turn the time over to Glenn J. Kimber, who will be our first speaker this evening. And then he will introduce the rest of the program. Okay?
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to be here this evening to learn about Syria and Israel and the prophecies around the area that will help us all to understand some of the things that are troubling many of us. We're grateful for this opportunity of learning. We love Thee and thank Thee for all our many blessings. And may those that present things this evening, may they have Thy Spirit to be with them. And those of us that are listening, may we glean the great message that they have for us. And we say this humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
You'll follow me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. What a thrill to be back in the hospital with a smile on our faces. Some of you were in these offices of the doctor's offices here some years ago, and we are so appreciative to the new owners of the facility. We so appreciate those that have helped fix it up. John DeReich back here at the back is representing those that have been working on it today with the Stradlings and others, and I think we ought to give them a hand for the work they're doing. They have a lot of plans for this building. We will, by the springtime, you'll have all the landscaping out front and new painting and everything on the walls, all the other offices and programs here. We'll eventually have the stage will be almost twice this size to where we'll be able to have some regular productions and programs here. And we plan on having a lot of young people participating over the next number of years in this facility. Building other facilities in the building. One of them will be able to have a full stage and be able to seat around 500 people. So it's a thrill to see what is happening. Appreciate very much the Cummings and their great help. Bob Cummings taught seminary for the LDS Church for better than 10 years and then almost 30 years as an instructor in the Institute program in California. And he and his sweet wife moved into this area a year or so ago and agreed to participate in helping to build an educational program to help our young people meet their full potential. We appreciate it very much. Brother McPhee, thank you very much for leading the music and having you with us. You're well known in the community, and it was fun to reminisce that my daughter is here today, just moved out from South Carolina, used to be in the choir with him. When we went over to the Middle East a few years ago, she brought a plate back and threw it at him, so he had his own flying saucer or something like that, didn't you? But anyway, good to be with you. Now, we wanted to also have greeting to people in many parts of the world who are watching and participating with us today. We're very appreciative of David Eggerson, who has been handling all of our technical work. This material is being beamed from Cedar City all over. We have people watching it in Israel. We have people all over this country. We have a couple of groups that are back as far east as Virginia, as well as other places. And we greet them. And I want you to know that we appreciate their being with us. We plan on these kinds of programs at least once a month. Our next one will be on the 14th of November. And in that presentation, we'll be doing what is called America in History and Prophecy, a biblical perspective. In that one, we're going to go back and talk about the American founding fathers and what they believed about this great land. You know, as a people, we have a tendency, I think, to have forgotten a little bit about America and about what its purpose and of the world really is. So tonight, as we're going to be going through our presentation, you want to please forgive us, because we hope that with all the technical that's happened to go on, that it'll do well. I don't know if we'll want to turn this first batch of lights off or not. Would you just turn this one off here and let us see if it's too dark? I look a lot better in the dark than I do the light. Is that okay, or do we need to do a little bit more? We're okay with that? All right. And so, David, if you'll start out our first presentation. A lot of times our people hear a lot about, quote, the Middle East, but we don't have a lot of understanding pertaining to it. But understanding the Middle East and its impact on us. You see, we talk about these various countries. We know about Iraq. Some of you have family over there. My son served 2 terms there. You got Afghanistan and you've got Iran. You got this whole thing going on. And it is very interesting, its impact on us. But there's a lot of misunderstanding about the Middle East and who these people are. And so for the reference, we're turning today for the understanding that approximately 45% of all the prophecies in the Bible yet to be fulfilled pertain to America, pertains to North and South America. For a long time, this was known as the land of Joseph. It still is. In biblical times, it was called the land of the everlasting hills. I don't know how many of you had a chance to be from top to bottom. We've been up here from Alaska all the way down to the base, went from the top up there in the North Pole all the way down to the Antarctica. And all the distance is hills. And this is referred to as the land of the everlasting hills. But about 45% of all the prophecies that our young people, our sons and our daughters are going to see fulfilled pertain to America. Approximately 45% of the prophecies in the Bible concern the areas of the Middle East. And though it's a much smaller area, a lot of the prophecies right along here. And when we talk about 45% and its impact on America, and the other 10% pertain to the rest of the world combined. But we study a lot about America because we are Americans. But we don't do very much about the Middle East and these other places unless we've been there. May I say by show of hands, how many have visited the Middle East? Anybody been to the Holy Land or the Middle East? First time that my sweetheart and I were able to go over there, her father, Dr. W. Cleon Skousen, and sweet wife Jewel, invited my wife and I to go over right after we had had a tragedy and the loss of 2 of our children who passed away. And Dr. Skousen said, I want you to go over with us. And I said, man, after all these medical bills, I don't have enough money for a postcard to go over there. And he says, come with us. That was one of the greatest thrills. And when I got over there in a place in Jerusalem that we talk about having a place was called the tomb, or the tomb of Jesus. I was in there looking around in that burial area, turned around and saw a sign on the wall, and the sign said, "He is not here, he is risen." I broke into tears. I stood there just weeping, realizing that because that tomb was empty, one day the tombs of my 2 children and my other loved ones would also one day be empty. And I prayed that the time would come that I'd be able to see others go back there and be able to have those kinds of experience. And the God of heaven has been kind enough to answer my prayers. I've been there more than 60 times now. I have wonderful friends in Egypt and Jordan, wonderful friends in Lebanon, wonderful friends all over Israel. Some are listening today. They know of my love and my loyalty to their countries over there. And I tell you, it's just a thrill to be talking about it. But let's just talk a little bit about more on it, if we might, please. Now, one of the things that we want to know about, who are the people in the Middle East? A lot of people know and talk about Abraham. We talk often about Sarah and Hagar. Sarah, the first wife, Hagar, the second wife of Abraham. We know that from Sarah we have Isaac, and then Jacob and Esau, and then 12 sons. We know that from Hagar you have Ishmael, 12 sons and 1 daughter. In fact, Esau marries one of the daughters. And then, when he was about 125 years old, Abraham married Keturah, and they had 6 children, 6 sons. And then you have Lot, who was the adopted brother of Abraham. Lot was the grandson of Abraham's father. And when Lot's father passed away, Abraham's father adopted Lot, as well as 2 of Lot's sisters. And they then became brother and sisters to Abraham. And through Lot you have the Moabites, Moab and the Moabites, Ammon and the Ammonites. Now I want you to kind of put in your mind here, because I want you to listen carefully. The majority of all of the Arab Islam people come from this grouping. They are cousins. We talk often about the Arab people over there as though they are adversaries. They are actually our cousins. And when you go back, and a lot of people say, well, the time is going to come when you're going to have all the Arabs fighting all the people over here, the Jews and Levite and Benjamin, and are going to be fighting that in the final battle before the Messiah comes. That is not true. Biblically, it's not true. Biblically, the final battle will be between Noah, descendants of Noah's son, Shem, which are all of these, and the descendants of Japheth, which are the Gentile nations. There's only one country in the Middle East that's from Japheth, that's Iran. All the rest here are from Shem. And so when we talk about this, I've been over there and I've heard people saying we need to have this constant battle going on between the Arab people and the Jewish people so that it can get bad enough that one day the Messiah will come back. That will not be between these people. We need to understand them, who they are, their background. Now I will say an introduction as we're talking on this. Are the things that some of the Arab people doing, are they good for us? No. Radical Islam is as evil and as dangerous as radical Christianity. In years past, we've had radical Christianity. One time it was called the Inquisition. And you had Christians coming out of Europe and going all over the world, killing everybody that wasn't Christian. And they were saying they were doing it for Jesus' sake. And they murdered thousands and tens of thousands of people in the name of Christianity. Were those Christians performing the real Christian belief of Christianity? Absolutely not. Now we have a group going out in some of those of Islam, and they believe that they need to be killing everybody that's not Islam, and do it for Allah's sake. It's as radical and as wrong as the Inquisition with the Christians. But to go blaming and attacking these people and start telling that all the Arab people are bad, that they're all terrible, that all of Islam is terrible and evil and we must shun it, is a dangerous thing. And my counsel to you, having been among these people for numbers of years, don't judge them that way. For if you do, then as some of them have told me, some of the press, I said to them, why do you not condemn those of your people who are doing this type of a thing? And he says, why did the Christians not condemn their people when they were doing things? And I said, well, that was a lot of years ago. And they said, the Holocaust? Much of the Holocaust, we'll talk about in a few minutes, were done by Christians who felt it their responsibility to eliminate Jews. You see, radicalism will never work, and we must be very, very cautious what we have with it. But now as we're going on to the next part of our presentation, in 621, 622, 10 of the tribes that had been captured in 721, 722 and taken in Babylon were freed. And they went up above here, this is the Caucasus Mountains, and they went from the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea back up there, and they populated much of this area here. And these became known as the Caucasians. How many have ever heard of a Caucasian? These are those that come from the Caucasus Mountains, and that was in 621 BC. Many of their original group disappeared. Some refer to them as the lost 10 tribes. Remnant remained and peopled all this area here. Now to understand a little bit more on what is happening. The remaining descendants of Abraham as well as Lot's descendants settled the entire Middle East area. And when we go over there now and meet with them, it's fascinating. For example, the big percentage of Jordan. How many have ever heard of Jordan? Big percentage of Jordan are Moabites from Lot. And when you go out there, you have the others called the Druze. Have any of you ever heard of the Druze? The Druze come from Abraham's third wife, Keturah. And these individuals are the same descendants of Jethro. Jethro? Was that the father-in-law of whom? Of Moses. That is correct. Next one, please. Now we come down to AD 135. We could go through a lot of information. My wife and I put together a book a number of years ago that we use as we travel over there. It's called The Middle East in History and Prophecy. It takes everything in one activity at a time that would be of great benefit for you to be able to get a copy, read through it, and be able to see it's the material, because we're covering a whole bunch of years, but doing very fast. 135 AD, there was a man by the name of Simon. Simon lived in an area in Jerusalem area, close to Jerusalem. He said he had a dream, and in this dream, he saw that he was supposed to be the one to raise up and overthrow Rome and drive Rome out of the area that we now refer to over there as referred for many years, Judea or Palestine. He fulfilled that dream, and he was able to drive the military out. Rome was so upset, they sent 5 legions, some of them from up in Jordan, some of them from up in Syria, and they're what we're talking about. And they came down, and Simon defeated them as well. And because he was so successful, he was given a title of Bar Kokhba. Bar is sun and Kokhba is morning star. This is the last star you see in the heavens before the sun comes up. Have any of you men or women ever gone with the young ladies out to camping or anything and you slept in a sleeping bag? I'm like a man by the name of Thomas Monson. He said, I spent a lot of nights in a sleeping bag. I just didn't sleep in it. But when you get up early in the morning before the sun comes up, you can still see the last star. This is a star that hails the welcoming of a new day. It's called Bar Kokhba, the morning star. And he was given a title that is Simon Bar Kokhba. He was going to be hailing a new day. He was driving out Rome. The fourth act has been prophesied by Daniel, 600 BC. When the fourth act was Rome would be driven out. And he was very successful. And one of the chief rabbis then called him the Messiah, the title of deliverer. Rome then brought in 11 legions. Some of them as far away as back in England, then called Great Britain. And they destroyed and came in, destroyed the army of the Jews. When the last one killed was Simon, they then took the rabbi to a great place, Caesarea, where they had a place where they would run races with the chariots, and with thousands of people watching, they tortured him to death. And then they made a decree. Any Jew that could be seen from Temple Mountain in Jerusalem would be put to death. If people had friends or individuals, they wouldn't have been friends, but individuals that they wanted to get rid of that were Jewish to occupy their property, etc., all they'd have to do is kidnap them, tie them up, bring them over close to where they could be seen from Temple Mountain, and their throats were slit by Rome, and they were thrown into common burial pits without them even being untied. And the Jews then left, went all over the world, literally. And this was called the Dispersa. And from 135 AD all the way down to 1948, they had no homeland. Now, without understanding what is happening with that background story, we miss what it's like over there. When our president goes over and he makes a declaration to the people that are living in Israel. Please, as we'll share with you in just a few minutes, you have Arabs that are living in Israel and are called Israeli. You have Jews that are in Israel called Israelis. You have Christians that are in Israel and called Israelis. Just like in America, you're called an American, not by your particular race. But with the press the way they have it, CNN and others always talk about Israel as being Jewish only. And we miss what is happening over there. And so it's important for us to understand a little bit about it. You remember the Crusades went on for over 350 years. A number of the Crusaders were some of those that on their way over through different parts of Europe, when they came to a city where they were not all Christians, they would kill everybody that wasn't Christian, practicing what it was like going over to the Holy Land. One of the first ones was called Peter the Hermit, led the very first Crusades. And they went on by different countries and coming back over there, trying to conquer the Arabs and reestablish Christianity or make Christianity in charge. That went on for over 350 years, when the last one was called the Crusade of the Children. And they said, surely that God will look with favor upon the children. So a whole group of children, many of them under the age of 12, led by a young man who was only 14, went over there with thousands of them that were going to go over and reconquer. Most were killed, many captured, many enslaved. And it just sickened the people on the concept. But if we don't understand what that is all about, we also miss the conflict between Christian Islam, Jewish, and a few other denominations. Next one. Now, this one here is a very interesting. With the establishment of Zionism in 1841, the tribe of Judah began to return to his homeland in Palestine. What was happening at that time? A man from America by the name of Orson Hyde had a dream about going all the way across the east coast of the United States, then getting on a boat and going over into Europe, traveling around Europe and inviting people to go to back the Jewish people, return back to the Holy Land. By this time, Napoleon had freed many of the Jews from the ghettos, and they were prospering in the different countries. And Orson Hyde had a very difficult time because they said they would not go. You remember that Orson Hyde lived with a widow, had the gift of language. She taught him in 7 days to read, write, and speak German fluently in 7 days. Then she taught him how to read, write fluent Hebrew in 8 days. In 15 days, he learned both German and Hebrew. And it was very interesting that he then memorized the Old and New Testament in both English and Hebrew. How many here have memorized the books in the Bible? Let alone everything else in it. And then when he was over there, and a lot of the Jewish leaders wrote pamphlets and said, no, we're not going. We like it here. We don't want to go back. And he made an interesting prophecy. He said, if you do not return, the time will come when the blood of your children and grandchildren will cry out from their graves. And I looked at that and I thought, wow. 1841, 100 years later, was 1941, when you had a great problem with the Holocaust. But now you take a look at 1841, and this is when the great Orson Hyde and a great man by the name of Dr. Joseph Ganot, the former Deputy Prime Minister of Israel, did a better than a 2-hour presentation on television over there, talking about the life of Orson Hyde being the first one to be called a Zionist. And I want you to remember that term. That term is a naughty word to a lot of people because they've changed the meaning of it. But the original meaning of Zionist was that there would be a place where the Jewish people could return again and live in a place they would call Zion. Now it's got some different namings, and you use the term, a lot of people misunderstand what is happening. But one of the things Orson Hyde did is met a man by the name of Herzl. And years later, that Herzl came in the last part of the 1900s. And he got together and set up at the first conference in Switzerland to try and help the people develop a desire for the Jews to return. Not many of them were very successful with that, but that's when they created the first flag. How many have seen the flag of Israel? You know, a lot of people say it's got the Star of David. That's called the Shield of David. It's different than a star. It's a shield. And it was given by Jehovah to David and said that as long as you will have this shield on your clothing and on your armament, then you will succeed in battle. It would be your protection. Now our next one there takes us all the way down to 1917. Lots of things happen there. Please follow with me. And I know it's kind of hard. We're covering a lot of material. But please understand is what is happening. You go through World War I. And during World War I, you had some individuals that were in Russia hired to write a terrible, terrible booklet against the Jewish people. I'll talk about it in just a moment or two. But it started creating a lot of hatred all over. But the Jewish people were wanting to return. But when General Allenby of England had conquered much of the Middle East area there, then they knew that they would be in charge of keeping the peace in that area. So a man here by the name of I almost said Herzl, isn't it? Wiseman. He said, if we go over there as Jewish people in Palestine, which means piercing stake, if we go over there and live, England, will you protect us? Well, since you're in charge of all the safety over there, will you protect us? He says, I will give all that I own, everything I've got, if you will do that. And they said, yes. And one of the leaders of the parliament got together by the name of Lord Balfour and created the Balfour Declaration, which was simply an announcement that any of the Jewish people going over there would be blessed and protected. That's what that was all about. Okay, next one. Now, after World War I, England takes charge of keeping the peace then in the Middle East. But now you have something fascinating happening. Now you have this whole movement over there of fear. And as you started having the people, Jewish people moving over, at first everything was very peaceful. The king of Syria, I would like to read a comment that he made on this. His name was King Faisal. And King Faisal, king of Syria, talked about the importance of being able to have the Jewish people, the Arab people, all there. All of Abraham's kids being able to get along together. And he said this. He said, the Jews are great helpers in our cause. He hoped that the Arabs may soon be in a position to make the Jews help to return and help them because of their kindness. He continued, we feel that the Arabs and the Jews are cousins in race, suffering similar oppressions at the hands of powers stronger than themselves. The Jewish movement is a national and not imperialistic. Our movement is national, not imperialistic. And there is room in Syria for us both. Indeed, I think that neither can be a real success without the other. That was just between 1917 of the Balfour Declaration and 1920. But by the time you got into 1920, you had an Arab leader in Jerusalem by the name of Hajj Amin. And Hajj Amin said that he had got information that the Jews were going to be coming over to Israel and destroy the Dome of the Rock and build their temple there where the Dome of the Rock is. He announced that, and hatred erupted so fast that that very weekend they had 32 synagogues that were burned. That was in the early 1920s. And from then on, the various nations started jumping on the bandwagon, taking sides, and producing one problem right after another as these people were driven away from each other. Mostly by people who weren't even from those countries. And now to see what has happened in Syria, we'll be talking about in just a minute, is just very, very fascinating. The next one. You see what had happened in Russia. They had written a book called The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. It's also sometimes referred to as the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Israel. This was a fictitious book. It was a book that was built, they said, that was pointing out how bad the Jewish people were, what they were planning on doing, how they were going to be destroying everybody over there that wasn't Jewish. And they created, it was an absolute false lie. It was all made up from the records that didn't even exist. And when Dr. Skousen was invited by a man by the name of David McKay to write a book called The Naked Communist and give that background story, it was the protocols was included in that book. But here in America, they joined in this hate campaign. And a man by the name of Ford up here, you'll see Henry Ford right up here. And he was very much anti-Semitic. He put literally millions of dollars into that document and sent it all over the Christian world, announcing that the Jews must be eliminated in order to have freedom permanently because they were evil, etc. And all of that nonsense was used by Christians in the name of the Messiah to kill almost 1/2 of all the Jewish people of the world. This we call then, this is your Holocaust. And a lot of people said, that really did not exist. They did not do that. Yes, it did exist. And I tell you, it was sad because wonderful, good people. I've been to Germany. They were wonderful and loving people, but were lied to. And a lot of times when you're lied about something, you end up maybe not doing things, but allowing some things to happen. And the protocols caused a terrible number. And some said, no, it wasn't anywhere near the 6. It might have been 500,000 or 1. But now, thanks to the modern techniques of gathering genealogical research, they now are able to identify and document, yes, it does exist. This was so interesting when they built a monument and museum in their name over in Israel. A few years ago, one of the Egyptian leaders came and visited that and went through that museum and saw those pictures and what had been happening in many countries of the world. He came out on the other side weeping. And he was crying. He said, for the first time in my life, I can now see what the problem has been. We must eliminate this hatred and bigotry. And he started working with the President of the United States by the name of Ronald Reagan. That great leader of Egypt was then targeted by radical groups who said, we must get rid of both leader of Egypt and Ronald Reagan. And when the leader of Egypt was assassinated and killed, Ronald Reagan announced he was going to be going to the funeral. When an individual from this state who had been studying down in Mexico and had learned of the plot to kill the president, let it be known. And when that was released on the press out of New York, the plot to kill President Reagan as well as the leader of Egypt. Ronald Reagan received word of that on Friday night. The funeral was going to be within a couple of days. And he sent the other former presidents of the United States instead of him going. And it literally saved his life. That was all tied to a man by the name of Gaddafi that we've been hearing about in the last few years. But that magnificent young man literally saved the life of the President of the United States, because they were going to take his life. Because there are a lot of people who do not want peace over there, and they will support whatever organization or group will guarantee no peace. We'll talk about that more in just a little bit. Now, after the war, the World War II, Winston Churchill, after seeing some of those camps, he said, we need to allow the Jewish people to return. We've already given the Balfour Declaration saying if they return, we'll protect them. But Churchill was defeated, you remember, at the very next election over there in England. The Labour Party then came on, and the Labour Party was against the Jewish people. And when you had a number of the individuals that were ready to go and on ships and getting close to Haifa, there where they could see families and friends on the shores, to be able to finally be able to come to a land of protection, they were met by the British men of war and driven back. Were not allowed to stay. Some of them were sent back to various ports that they left from. And then it created hostilities then over there. And now you had some of the radical Jewish groups saying, we're going to turn against England and keep fighting England. until they honor what we want to have happen. And they would make an announcement. They'll say, we're going to come in and blow up a pipeline. We're going to destroy this. Vacate it. We don't want to hurt people. Vacate it. And then that whole line would blow up or different. And then in December they went down to Jerusalem into the headquarters of the British and went in at the Camp David Hotel and says, this is your headquarters, but we're going to destroy it and blow it up. Scotland Yard said there's no way they can do that. There is no way. They did not vacate. And you had a terrible explosion. And over 90 people were killed in that. And the people of England said to their English people over there in charge of security, get out of there. We do not want our people there anymore. So England announced they were going to be leaving. You had David Ben-Gurion saying to the people over there, don't leave us. You leave us, we're not safe. Don't leave us. And England said, we're leaving. So the United Nations was invited to come in. The concept was, we will divide up Palestine, and we will take part of it and call it Israel. That's what you have. The orange part there would be called Israel. You notice that part of there right there, you did not have enough. I wish that I didn't have this vibrating hand from this darn cancer, but anyway, forgive me from all the movement. But right along here, and you'll notice this is where they were. Places right here were only 9 miles wide. But when they announced in 1947 at the United Nations they're going to divide it up, all of it, and give part of it to Jordan, and part of it would be Israel, the Arab countries exploded and says, no, you are not. And the United Nations says, we will vote on it. And if we vote on it in 1947 and agree to it, then on the 15th of May, 1948, we'll have the land of Israel. That vote was made. The first one to cast a vote yes was Truman, representing the United States. Number 2 is the Soviet Union leadership. And the United Nations voted and said yes. But by then, now it became an whole eruption. Now you had all the countries around saying, no, we will not allow it. And you would now enter into what became known as the War of Independence. Now you'll say, boy, where are you going with all this, Dr. Kimber? You're covering a whole bunch of history fast. But we watch it all the time on the news. We hear about it. But if we're not seeing what's happening with it, we are lost on it. So I want you to just notice right here. This area right here became known as the West Bank. Have you ever heard of the West Bank? This right here was the Gaza Strip. Anybody learned of the Gaza Strip? And up here on top is the Golan Heights. Anybody heard of the Golan Heights? But I want you to see what you got around. You got Jordan, you got Egypt down here, you got Syria up here, clear up to Damascus, and you got Lebanon up there. Now to show you your distances, the width right here from one side to the other is only 40 miles. It's all of Israel, the width of it is from here to Beaver. That's the width. The length of it is between here and Scipio. That's the length of the whole country you have here. And what I want you to know is in the land there that you have where it become Israel, you had around 300,000 Jewish. Write that down in your mind or on paper. I hope some of you are taking notes. Because there was 300,000. But there were over 2 million Arabs living in that same area. And the other Arab countries said to those, get out of there, because we're going to come in and kill all the Jewish people, and the bullets don't know what's right and wrong, and if you're not careful, you're going to get hurt. And about 1.5 million left and went down, most of them, right down in here, and settled down there temporarily. And they said, we will not allow this to be called the land of Israel. It's going to remain Palestine. We are not Israelis, we're Palestine. And you add over 1.5 million Arabs who stayed and became citizens of Israel. Where you add 1.5 million Arab Israelis, 300,000 Jewish Israelis. During this war, this becomes a terrible civil war. It goes on from 47 all the way to 49. 1949, Russia said, let's have a peace treaty. And so they'd had peace, but nobody signed a treaty. The Arabs living in the land there of Orange said to those that were on vacation, you can return if you will sign 2 agreements. One, the fact that we have the right to exist, and number 2, that you'll live in peace. And they voted no. And so the Arabs and the Jews in that area, they're now Israelis, says to the Arabs there that were there, then you can't come back. Jordan didn't have room, couldn't take care of them. Egypt couldn't take care of them. So Egypt and Jordan and Syria built camps right here and put them in camps, surrounded them with barbed wire and created refugee camps. And they became known as the Palestinian what? Refugees. And in a minute I'll tell you one more group, but I'll tell you 1960s, early 60, you had some of the young men that had been in there for a period of time. As teenagers are now in their 20s, they broke out, went up into Russia, received training as terrorists, came back and formed an organization. One of them was named Arafat, and they formed an organization to liberate them from those camps. They became known as the Palestinian Liberation Organization. You know it as what? PLO. How many have heard of the PLO? That's where they came from. And their whole desire was to liberate these camps and free those people. And some of them escaped and went down into Egypt and tried to assassinate the leader of Egypt because he had been part of that, putting him there. They did not succeed. He came back up with gases and gassed over 300,000 of the people in the refugee camps. They're cousins. They then tried to come up and to Amman and take out King Hussein of Amman. They were not successful. In retaliation, a number more were killed. But now you have that one, and you have some of the other countries I showed you before where you had over there with Iraq and others. And they said to the PLO, if you'll quit fighting our people and start fighting the Jews, we'll finance you. So they started financing to go out and to literally start now the PLO make an attack on the Jews. They weren't making an attack on just the Jews. It was those that were called Israelis, Arabs and Jews. And this goes on for a period of time. And every time Israel would retaliate or defend themselves, the United Nations and others would come up in opposition. And so they decided they need to come down here and hire a group down here and train them with tax money from you and I, and use our tax money and be able to train them. They were Arab, and have them become to keep in check the PLO. They're called the Hamas. How many have heard of Hamas? And they were all trained there to keep that in balance. And now we come down to the next part we see, and oh wow. If we come back now, next slide please. And Israel becomes independent 1948. Next one please. And then you have your conflicts go for 20 years until you get down to 1967. 1967, the leader of Egypt now announces that we're going to come in and kill everybody that's living in this land of Israel. Everybody that's Jew, everybody that's Arab, doesn't matter. You're all going to die. They came in and dropped leaflets on the people and gave them the date they were going to have it done. Israel then sent one of their top military generals all around the world among the Christian nations to try and get the Christian nations to come and help them, protect them from annihilation. Could get no help. And the second man in charge over there became the first man while the other one was gone. And the parliament said to this man by the name of Moshe Dayan, he had lost one eye in one of the prisons some years before. And Moshe Dayan was put in charge. And Moshe Dayan came out, and in 6 days he did a victory of all the various countries and established what became known as fantastic victory. To know more about it and how the impact it has on you, that is why we gave to each of you here tonight a copy of Dr. Skousen's talk on fantastic victory. And we have his full book at the back that gives the whole background story and how it all ties into prophecy. You see, a lot of this and going through will say, oh my goodness, well, you still haven't seen what that impacts us. It impacts us drastically because 80% of all the finances that's going to the people over there are coming out of your tax pocket. A lot of the military and everything over there to guard this is your pocket. And now we'll be talking about some of the others. Next one, please. Now, we told you about who are the PLO. You see, here you have Arafat. And he became a real terrorist and a mass murderer. It was sad. If you want to have one of the most fascinating studies, read about what happened when this individual was put in charge of the policing of the West Bank. And what happened when this group went up into Jordan at the time of Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan said, I did the biggest blunder of my life in allowing our military to stop what was happening there as the PLO went into Lebanon and literally destroyed and killed almost 80% of all the Christians living in Lebanon, Christian Lebanese. We were hoping, but because of schedules, we were not able to have him here. But one of the top family members, I was lecturing with him down in Texas when he received a telegram that his grandparents and other members of their family had been assassinated and killed by the PLO, and their homes were taken over as headquarters. I wanted him to have a chance, and I still want him to come over and meet with you and let you hear what's happening. You see, we have so much disconnect because we watch television and we want to know what's going to happen, so we watch the 6 o'clock news. And when we want to become an authority, we watch it again at 10. And if you really want to know what's happened, we'll have all the news pundits speaking on it. Then we are geniuses. But we can't dissolve ourselves from our Heavenly Father's kids, our brothers and sisters living in these other countries, where other countries, including us in the United States, are now using our tax money to enhance and to strengthen the division. They're not working to bring people together. They're doing things to divide and to set up dictatorship control. It's sad watching. Next one, please. Now up in we talked about who are the Hamas. Then up in Syria, up there when you had the destruction of Lebanon. Next slide, please. Then you had the coming in to Syria. Leaders that were called the Brotherhood. I hope you can see something there. You go on and look at their crest and see what you've got there. With the swords they have across, what they have written. Do you see what's in the background there? Can you see the wings here and the head of our eagle? How many are able to see that from where you are at? Do you see what they're talking about doing in the name of their scripture? They want to destroy and take over the powers of the world. They are radical. Please remember who they are and what they stand for, because it's this group that surfaced in 1982 with strength, tried to conquer Syria, and the leader, who is the father of the man now who is king, Assad, then a military leader, blocked them from taking over. And they would stay abreast for a period of time. Next one. Then you have the Hezbollah, and that's happening over there. Now I want you to look at this one, because time is running out, I know. And we've got our friends over in Israel that we want to have them call and talk to us and ask and answer what questions you might have. But I want you to look at this. This is in Jordan. These are the refugees that have been fleeing from the present king. The one that we just simply went over there and said, you are wonderful, even though you gassed thousands of your people. You are wonderful, and we'll let you be part of the Peace Prize program if you will just now give up your weapons of mass destruction. And you'll say, wait a minute. We were told there were no weapons of mass destruction over there. And that any comment we had that there were weapons of mass destruction were made up. Now they're collecting them. The Soviet Union has an assignment to go in and collect them. And now the king, who's been part of this mass murdering, is now being exonerated as a great man of peace. But this is a brand new refugee city. Take a good look. These are refugees that have come there in just the last few years. They've had 458,000 refugees come into these areas. This one here you're seeing there, better than 120,000. They've had over 1 million who have come out of there. 52% women and children, 48% men, trying to escape and come out. Now this is where some of you fit in. I don't know how many of you here or those listening are aware. But if you belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they're over here. They've spent in the last few months over $1 million at a time coming in there and helping these people survive and be taken care of. Understand that this is in desert, but it's over the main underground water supplies. They cannot have sewer systems going into the ground. They've got to have them above ground, properly taken care of, and driven out of that area to preserve the water supplies. And what I thought was absolutely thrilling is when the Mormon Church went in and got permission to help them, they took over $1 million and went into Jordan. Instead of spending it over here and taking stuff across the seas, they took $1 million into Jordan and purchased the kits, purchased the food, purchased what they were going to need, mainly to help the women and children, and help the economy of Jordan, and then brought them in there for the people to be taken care of. Now just a little bit more. The next one there. I want you to take a look at this. How many of you have ever heard of Ezekiel? Okay? Any of you, if I gave you a nickel, how many of you would tell me when Ezekiel lived? Well, you knew I didn't have a nickel, huh? I'll give you a hint. Lehi. Now, Ezekiel prophesied and said, listen carefully, before the Messiah returns and comes and rescues the Jews, when their Messiah comes, this will be the map of Israel. Right now, this is Israel right here. But they'll be given part of Egypt here will be given to Israel. And the bottom part of Israel will be given to Egypt. Israel will then come over into Jordan and will occupy almost all of Jordan, way up here above Damascus. This is Syria, clear up here in Syria on the top part of there, and then all of the southern part of Lebanon. That's what it's going to be. The fascinating thing is this will join here at a time of peace for these. And what would cause a problem if you have these willingly become part here? You start with Damascus and go from Damascus on down, that area is leaving in droves to come down to be protected in Jordan. But we have a problem. Our president took $1.25 billion and gave it to the Brotherhood. And gave the Brotherhood the assignment to take out the Arab leaders of different countries. Their desire is to conquer and take out the leadership of 57 Arab countries. If it's one or two countries at a time. They came out and took out Gaddafi. You heard a lot about that. Gaddafi was an evil man. There was no doubt about it. He was a dictator. And what the people in England and France and America said, we'll come over there, you freedom fighters. If you want to be freedom fighters, rise up, overthrow Gaddafi, and we will assist you. The freedom fighters identified themselves, became and surfaced. We then backed away. And the majority of them were slaughtered and killed. And then the Brotherhood leadership came in to take over. We had Benghazi. For goodness sakes, I wished we had time to go in and have me give you the background on Benghazi. How many ever heard of that? It is just a fascinating experience. Is the light too bright for you, dear?
Sorry.
Oh, no, don't be sorry. I mean, if you need to, we got another place where we can douse some more lights if you want to. But what happened is we abandoned the freedom fighters. How many have heard anything about over there lately? You don't hear anything anymore, do you? Then it was take out Egypt. Egypt was a fascinating country. Everybody was going to take out Mubarak. Mubarak was fighting hard to try and get the United States Constitution into their country. And we abandoned him. And they came in and took him out. And then the Brotherhood put in charge one of theirs. And the army said, no, you can't be in charge. Then we have a civil war. America financing the Brotherhood. And the army over there saying no. And we hear all these stories about how terrible we are and America's not welcomed. They're confused. And when you had the attacks over there in Egypt, you've been to Egypt, and over there, our embassy and that great museum, a number of businessmen, some of them I know you know, stood arm to arm and surrounded that area to protect it from the mobs. We don't hear that. They built 3 schools over there, one in Alexandria, one in Cairo, one up in Luxor, to house students, to have them taught and trained on the United States Constitution, because they wanted the United States Constitution as part of their country. And we couldn't get our people to do it. Our State Department said no. A member of our Supreme Court said, no, it's obsolete. You don't want our Constitution. And then you had the Brotherhood, then went after the leadership over here in Jordan. They tried to take him out with money supplied by you and I. And the Brotherhood came in there to destroy him. Who is the king of Jordan? Who's taking care of those thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of refugees? His mother was from England. His stepmother was from Alaska. He had most of his training in England, military and educational, over there. And now we come in with our money and try to take him out. And he said he was able to hold them off temporarily. And now he's saying, if you keep putting money into the Brotherhood, we don't have enough money to take care of our people and all the refugees and everybody come in. We don't have a chance. Now, I make a prediction. I predict a time going to come when Jordan will ask Israel, can we become part of you? And we will help establish peace on the West Bank. We'll help establish in there with water supply, etc. We'll help you if you will protect us, because you're the only military power in this whole area that could protect us. You watch. Because right now, that's what they're talking about wanting to do. And thanks to people like you making donations, where millions of dollars are going in to help take care of these people that are right now in terrible war. But one day, you're going to see Jordan, you're going to see Israel, much of Syria are going to be brothers again. You will see that. And when you get the Fantastic Victory book back there, if you do, and you listen to Dr. Skousen's material, you'll see a time coming when you're going to have descendants of Japheth coming in with millions of people, divide like right here, and march down on Jerusalem, killing all the Jews, Arabs, and Christians in their way. And that will create the great battle that the Jewish Messiah will come. And when you see that one there, then we'll be able to look to see what prophetically going to happen. When one day there will be peace at last. And one of the thrilling things is one day you're going to see the building here called Dome of the Rock of Islam. And you're going to have the temple here built after the pattern of Solomon's temple. They will be side by side on Temple Mount. This does not have to be torn down to build this. They will both be there, and they will worship in peace together, thanks to many of you who will be rising up helping these magnificent people gain their prophetic assignment. Now, that was a long hour, but it's good for sleeping. Isn't this a nice room to sleep in? This is super. Now, what I would like to do, and I will comment in advance because I'm not absolutely positive the electronics and how we're able to have it. But I've watched enough news broadcasts to know that when you're broadcasting voice and people from other countries, you don't always have an opportunity to have it work right. But there are two individuals that I want to now introduce to you. One of them is named Dr. Oren Gutfeld. In February, we'll be bringing Dr. Gutfeld from Israel speaking in this facility. He is a great archaeologist, but a great military leader. And Dr. Gutfeld is the one that is in charge of an excavation over there called the ruins of the family of Lehi. And he's also a great military man. How many have met him? Any of you here have met him yet? And you're going to really, really enjoy. But I asked him, I said, since you're friends of Netanyahu, and because you are part of there, and you've done a lot of work in Jordan, a lot of work in Syria, fought the battles up in Lebanon, let us call and have you visit with us. He says, okay, stall as long as you can, because at 8:15 there, it's 5:15 in the morning over there, because they're ahead of us, so it's tomorrow morning. And so over there, it's the morning that they will start their Sabbath tomorrow afternoon there. And but he is willing to come on and visit with us. He is a great success. He's one of the only Jewish people ever invited, Jewish leaders, ever invited to go over to Rome, to the Vatican, and spend a week with the Pope. He's just a great leader. I could say friends of Netanyahu. He's very familiar politically, been a great military man, and a wonderful friend. So we thought we would give him a call. Now, I think that you'll have him on the phone there. I won't have him on, we'll be visiting with Dr. Goldman in just a few minutes, but we'll have him on Skype, but we couldn't get Oren on that. We'll have him on the phone and hope that our sound system is good. But I want some of you to feel free to ask questions. So if any of you have any question that you'd like to ask of the people living there. Anybody have any question at all that any of you wanted to ask? You got no questions about asking somebody living over there? At least you could ask, how's the BYU Center? You what? What we can do is, Don, you've been over there. Do you want to ask a question? Okay, David, we'll see
Please
how
check the number and dial.
Would you be kind enough to turn the light on again, please? His name is Dr. Oren Gutfeld. Okay. Hey, that is bright. I can see that some of you stayed partially awake.
Good evening, sir.
Hello, Dr. Gutfeld. How are you?
Thank you very much.
You've got a group of people here that have been listening to me for the last hour and 10 minutes and want to really have a chance to listen to you for a break.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Can you hear me well?
He can hear you, so you can respond, okay? Both of them that are awake said hello. And we know it's about 5:15 in the morning over there.
That's correct. Well, it's the middle of the day.
Soon it will be Shabbat Shalom for you.
Shalom to everyone.
Oren, I've introduced you as not only being a great archaeologist, but a chance to have served in the military and have a great knowledge pertaining to the things over there. Would you be kind enough to take about 15 minutes and talk to us a little bit about what is happening in the Middle East from your perspective?
Oof. Okay. First of all, I would like to say that it's very, very complicated. And sometimes it seems that from far away, especially from Utah, it looks very, very different from what we feel over here. I have to say that the situation right now here in Israel is great, first of all. It's very peaceful and very, very nice.
That's one question people want to know, Oren. They want to know, is it peaceful over there? Is it safe over there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. Here in Israel, it's very, very safe. And everyone is welcome. The weather is wonderful. It's 80 degrees right now. But the problem is what's going on outside of Israel, around Israel.
Yeah.
And it looks more and more that, and we'll talk about the reasons probably later, that what was called the Arab Spring is, we called it the Arctic Arab, or very, very winter Arab.
Wow. Let me ask you, I showed the people the map, Oren, of where Gaza is. Are you still having a lot of rockets and a lot of problems being shot out of Gaza?
No, with Gaza in the last few months since our last operation in the winter, it seems to be quiet, although we know that they'll continue to receive ammunition and weapons and missiles for the next one.
Yeah.
Only a week ago, a tunnel about a mile long was uncovered by the Israel Defense Forces. It's a terror tunnel that was dug from a village in the street into the side of Israel in order, to kidnap a soldier or to kidnap a civilian and to have a negotiation.
So you were able to stop a lot of that. I had a presentation not long ago, and I shared to some of our people. I don't know if you knew Glenn Beck or not, but I told Glenn, I said, when they started shooting all those rockets from Gaza, take a picture of the rockets. These were not homemade. These were rockets that they were shooting were actually made in America, a number of them. I said, take a picture of the old ones and then now. But is that not true?
No, that's true, of course, completely true. That's correct. Most of the weapons that the Hamas in Gaza are using made in Iran. And if I would think about threats of Israel, I would cut it into three. The main threat is from Iran. And the second one is from the new regimes like the Islamic Brotherhood that rise up in Egypt. And the third one is the Palestinian problem in the Gaza Strip. This is how I divided the threat. Regarding Iran.
You have a lot of friends
Yes, go ahead.
that are Arab, and a lot of friends that are Arab Christian and that over there. I know that. What's the friendliness going on within Israel? Are you comfortable with things progressing that way, or does our president's demand of the giving up the West Bank and all the things he's doing, does that build peace or does that just divide?
It's very, very complicated, but nobody speaks right now about giving back the West Bank, because look what happened last time when we gave the Gaza Strip 8 years ago and received more than 10,000 missiles in return.
Yeah.
So nobody speaks. We learned our lesson, and it's not going to be very, very easy. As I said, the main problem right now is Iran, and we're very, very concerned because it seems that President Obama is very urged to, I would say it very, very carefully, to stop the sanction about Iran. Yeah. And the reason for that is that threatened Iran many, many times, or threatened the free world, that if something will not happen to Iran, Israel will attack Iran. That's the reason that the European community and the United States put the sanction on Iran. And we are very, very concerned if the sanction will take off, and for nothing, for no reason.
Yeah.
It's not that they stop the type of food in Iran or to work with the uranium and to prepare actually the bomb, which according to American intelligence will be ready in 1 year.
Hold just a minute, Ron. Are of you following a little bit on what he's talking about with Iran? See, what he's talking about here is the great threat that they have in Iran. The Israeli intelligence has been able to monitor the growth of the atomic bombs or the explosive devices they have available over there, has pleaded with the United States to step in and stop it. And the United States, instead of stopping it, has provided a neutral posture. And our president has said to our Secretary of State, Kerry, to go over there and to remain friends with them, but not to put any pressure on them. So Netanyahu went before the United Nations and said, we cannot afford to allow Iran a nuclear weapon, for they've declared their intention of not only destroying Israel, but conquering all the Arab countries around them. Please know
that's correct.
Iran is the only country there that's in a posture of being from Japheth, and they want to be in charge of all the Arab countries. So the Arab countries are asking Israel, stop Iran if you have to. Is that not correct?
That's correct. This is the full picture over here. And sometimes from the States it looks like everyone are Arabs and Muslims. So first of all, Iran are not Arabs, they are Persian. They not even speak Arabic. Second, they are Shiites. They are not Sunnis. Most of the Arab countries are Sunnis, including Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the Gulf countries, and they are really, really concerned about
Yeah.
the atomic bomb in Iran. And the relationship with Israel, I mean, it's below the table, is very, very good in the last few years, and even according to some foreign sources, Saudi Arabia gave okay to the Israel Defense Forces to attack from the area of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating because our president said there's no way you can go over there to stop them because you can't fly that far. And to have the other Arab countries saying, well, land your planes in our country. We'll help you, but you've got to stop Iran. Now, it's interesting to try and figure out what that's about. Hold on just a minute. They got a couple of questions that I need to get from.
Sure.
Do you have some questions?
Yeah, we're a little bit foggy on the whole difference between a Sunni and a Shiite.
Between whom, huh?
The Sunnis and the Shiites.
The difference between the Shiites, the Sunnis, and the Kurds.
Sorry, what was the question?
They want to know about the difference between the Shiites, the Sunnis, and the Kurds.
Actually, it's a completely different religion. It's all called Muslims, but it's completely different religion. And, you know, Yusuf, a very good friend of mine, is a Palestinian, is a Sunni. And when we're talking about Iran, he says all the time, don't worry, they will slaughter us first, and then they will go to the Jews. I mean, the Sunni world is so afraid from the Shiites because of their history, their early history. The Kurds are completely different things. The Kurds are lives in the northern part of Iran and Iraq. And also, it's a little bit different than the Sunnis and the Shiites, and they're all fighting each other.
Yeah, they're just different branches,
Actually, that
aren't
was
they?
the lack of Israel.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Let's continue over the situation in Syria right now. As you know, a massacre, a genocide has happened in Syria in the last 2 years. More than 110,000 people have been murdered
Did
over there
everybody
in the
get
last
that?
2 years. And it
He's
seems
talking
that
about
nobody cares.
Yeah, hold just a second. He's talking about Syria. There's been over 100,000 people killed by the government, by Assad, who is the son of the Assad that we talked about before.
They were not killed, they were murdered by their regime, their own president, Assad. It seems that nobody cares. Even the Security Council of the United Nations didn't condemn it because of China and Syria. And not like in Egypt, for example, where for more than 40 years, a very good friend, it's not that we liked him, but very good friend to the United States and to Israel, who held Egypt strong and against the radical Islamic Brotherhood, President Mubarak. President Obama released him after 24 hours. In the riots started in Cairo 2 years ago. He left in 24 hours, or asked him to go in 24 hours, and didn't give him a backup. And then the Islamic Brotherhood came into power. Is it better? Is it brought us democracy? Is it better to the area, to the Middle East? No.
Yeah.
And now, after the military took off and wanted to have back a secular government and to have a free election again, and what President Obama did, he stopped all the military aid to Egypt to weaken them, which is terrible. Now let's go back to Syria. In Syria, as you said, more than 100,000, some sources 110,000 people were murdered by President Assad, and nobody even condemned it. No one stopped it. And President Obama was threatened them and bought some ships to the Mediterranean and threatened them, but he didn't push the button. And Assad is strong again and again. Now, Assad is not doing that by himself. He asked the Iranian soldiers to come and help him, and also the Hezbollah, which is also Shiites that runs under Iran, and they are fighting for him in Lebanon, make him stronger and stronger.
Yeah. And let me ask one more, because we got to go for now, but what's your main opinion now as we conclude? Are our people in Israel optimistic or pessimistic about America's involvement?
Oh, American involvement. Look, what President Obama did in the last round in the Mediterranean, he brought the Russians back into the playground. After 40 years, after the Yom Kippur 1973 war, when America became very, very strong and powerful in the Mediterranean, and the Russians took off, now he asked them to come back, and they are out. And so, about America, we are a little bit pessimistic. For ourselves, we are very, very optimistic. Life here in Israel is great, very, very good. The economy is much more stronger than in the States. Actually, it's one of the best economies in the world. And I invited everyone to come to Israel and to dig.
Yeah, we're going to have to. We've got to get you over here first. One last question, sir.
Israel's estimate before Iran gets to
Pardon?
what is Israel's estimate before Iran has?
Do we have an estimate? When I listened to Netanyahu the other day, he guessed about less than 2 years. Do you have any more accurate estimate about how soon Iran might have a nuclear weapon?
Yes. According to the last report of the United Nations, I think, or was it the American intelligence, I don't remember, we have 1 more year.
Wow. One year. Well, Oren, I wanted to thank you very, very, very much for our being with you. So let's give him
My pleasure.
Thank and applause. And when you come over in February, we'll have you in front of this group, and you won't have to be speaking over a PA system that makes your words hard to understand. We'll be able to get your full story.
Thank you very much.
But please tell your
Thank you
family
very much.
hello for us, and tell them that
I will.
we have our love from here to you folks. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good evening, everyone. Enjoy the conference. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Now, as we go on with, we're on with him? Yes. We won't need to be on that one. We're going to Skype it with Joseph Goldsman. And we'll have his picture, will we not? If we can get him. Julie? He says that they feel that they will have a nuclear weapon capability within a year. So that's why Netanyahu went to the United Nations and said, regardless of what the rest of you do, we're not going to allow it.
I think the last I read, the U.S. was estimating 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
I didn't have a question here.
Because he's not.
All right, just a second.
It says he's busy, so he probably just needs to be. He probably just needs to know we're trying to get him.
All right, just hold on. I'll give you the number right here. Okay, here's the number. It's dialing. You can touch him. Isn't it crazy that you can pick up the phone and call anywhere in the world? And what's fun is our son is tapping into this from Afghanistan, where he's able to watch this whole thing, and we're learning a lot. I marvel at this camera. See this great big camera here? Remember the ones you used to have on the shoulders and had those great big long ones? That one does a better job than all those other ones did, and what they're working with.
I'm there.
Oh, you're here. We're trying to call you on Skype. Are you there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let me try to call you on Skype. Make sure you're ready. It says you're busy.
All right. Yeah.
I hope that there's a couple of things. I know we're getting close to Christmas season and gift season, Thanksgiving, etc. You've got two back here. One's American history and prophecy. The other is Middle Eastern history and prophecy. I sure recommend you have one of those for each of your married children. And you for one for you and your married kids. Let them understand and go through and see what's happening. Because when you study the prophecies of what our young people are going to be involved in, the Middle East is a very powerful part of their lives. We're going to be having a lot to do with them. You're going to have thousands of people from here over there participating in special events. And one of the things that would be very helpful to understand, Dr. Skousen's book back there, Fantastic Victory, that's the section on the Jews in prophecy. You really good about. There he is.
Hold on just a second.
Too loud.
A little loud. He can hear you through there.
Well, you can back up volume, can you not? Speak to me, Joseph. What? You got way down, David. Way down.
I'll try to take care of that in a second.
Joseph, you look just like you did the last time I saw you.
Here, we can probably hang on.
Keep it coming down. Hit this light here for me again. All right, now let's hear how you do.
You there?
I am.
Still kind of loud.
David is trying to know how to turn volume down, and he's having a hard time.
Well, basically,
That's not just a basic volume switch, David?
You think so, but
Yeah, try it anyway.
okay. How's that?
All right, try it now, Joseph.
I am.
Okay.
We apologize. We're learning about equipment.
Is that better?
All right, now let's see how you are.
Can you hear you?
Oh, that's better. All right, Joseph. Have you been listening to the program so far?
No, I'm sorry. I couldn't get into the program. I didn't listen.
Is he speaking through his computer or through his phone?
There's the computer.
Okay.
I'm speaking to the computer.
Maybe turn his mic down.
Can you turn your mic down on your computer, Joseph? We're having trouble. We might have to climb back on the phone. We're having trouble understanding him anyway.
It was better earlier today. It was really clear.
Yeah, I don't know why I was having trouble. But there's something humming through here that's your problem.
Well, it's coming from his end, though. You'll notice.
I know, but it's magnified here.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Now you look as handsome as your wife said you did. All right, Joseph, talk to us a little bit about your experience over there and what you're feeling and finding up, because you're up more in the northern part of Israel. What's happening up on the borders there between there and Syria there?
Well, lately there's
turn it down some more, David.
The operation will take place not too far from the border, between Syria and the south. And there is no, between Israel and Syria, there is nothing.
I'm not understanding. Are you understanding him at all? You can understand him good? Good for you. I'll come down there and hear them. Okay, keep going. Okay. Anybody have any questions you wanted to ask him? No questions?
What about the research that he's doing on the cave?
Sorry, I can't hear the question.
He's not the one doing the excavation. That was Dr. Gutfeld. Yeah. Joseph, I know that you've had an opportunity to know quite a bit about relationships with Jordan. How much impact are the refugees coming out of Syria having on Jordan when you have 750,000 refugees coming in?
Well, it's not easy. I mean, to take care of people, to feed them, to find shelter, and it's difficult to explain someone if you don't see them with your eyes. It's difficult to realize how much people might suffer, they have to run to leave their home without maybe the shoes and the jacket or something like this. Well, this is not easy. This is not easy. And they come in now because they want to risk their life. It's shooting to place, as you know, it's in Syria. People estimate between 100,000 people will kill. So what we do if you be you or you will take your car and you run away. Was there any refugees? It's terrible. You take what you can, and can you imagine this? And you go away from your home, and you don't know what to do. Someone should take care of you.
Yeah, somebody's got to take care of them.
It's difficult. I saw this once in Europe a long time ago, a year ago, and I used to when I went there, and I saw the refugees that escaped from their home. There was no destination, don't know what to do. It's difficult, very difficult.
Yeah. Well, now, Dr. Gutfeld talked to us about the problems with Iran and that situation. But talking about back up to Syria, I'm concerned that I'm not seeing hardly any breakthrough for peace in Syria, even though they're pretending to bury their so-called weapons of mass destruction. They're not putting aside their regular weapons. Am I wrong on that?
to defend my country, and I'm sorry to say I had to look to the first step of my tank, and we have to stop the Syrian invasion, so we have to know, is this regime, when they will start, and what will be the whole plan, and how they're going to do this. They surprised us once in the past, and we have to be ready to defend ourselves.
Yeah, sad watching. Well, Joseph, we appreciate your time with us this morning. I know you've stayed up much of the night to be part of that program. When are you going to come over and see us? Well, we'll love you over, and we'll try and see you in April when we come over.
Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Well, thank you, Joseph. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll do it again when we get some better equipment. How's that? All right. Tell your family hello. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye. You know, for us, we're in a posture of living in a technical world. And we watch this like this, where we only get part of the words, and sometimes we get discouraged. Are any of you here old enough to remember the first time they started broadcasting on television a program called General Conference? Remember in front of the TV that we had to turn on and wait for the tubes to warm up for about 20 minutes, and then that would start coming on bubbles, and pretty soon we'd come in. It's a marvel to me to be able to be like this and even talk to them back and forth. But one of the things that I wanted to do tonight for you to accomplish, I wanted you to feel the reality that we're not that many miles away from them. And the Arabs and Jews are being lied to and attacked in every direction. Individuals that want to destabilize the Middle East for economic purposes are using our tax money to do it. And what they're doing now is that they are using other things to detract from what's happening over there. We've been playing this stupid game, economics, with the president who has been in 5 years now, and we've never had a balanced budget yet. Now to come up and play politics and everything with it, at the same time is diverting our attention away from what's happening in other parts of the world. We're having some of the worst battles going on right now in Afghanistan than we've seen since Vietnam. We're not even keeping up on them. And what happened over in Egypt when the army said, "We will not allow the Brotherhood to take over." Now the army said, "America, help us economically." America says, "We can't, because we're helping the Brotherhood." And they're saying, "Wait a minute, we don't want the Brotherhood." And we're saying, "We don't care, you're going to get them." And where this is going is crazy, because it's destabilizing. The Brotherhood are a mobhood. It's like going into Chicago and say we're going to turn the police department over to the mafia. It's like going to the West Bank and say we're going to turn the police department over to Arafat and the PLO. They had so many killings over there during that time because we were sending Arafat $1 million a day. Now please, the West Bank is the same size as the Wasatch Front from about 21st South to the capital. And from the freeway up to the mountains. That's the entire size. And they're bringing in $1 million a day, and Saddam Hussein was bringing $1 million a day in, and we had this civil war going on constantly. To arrive on peace, the Israelis, and please remember that a third of the Israeli cabinet are Arabs. Over a third of their military are Arab. And they came in and had to set up 127 checkpoints in an area like between 21st South and the Capitol and Freeway up in that area to try and block all the movement of arms coming in. When Arafat died of a social disease, Israel went in and went into the headquarters and got all the records of where all the weaponry and everything was, where it was in Syria, what was happening in Jordan, in Upper Jordan, what was happening in Lebanon, turned it over to the United States, and our State Department would not believe it. They said it was biased. And all of these weaponry and everything over there is just sad because it's affecting our kids. Your kids and grandkids, some of them are going to be involved in the wars over there. And the prophecy of what's going to be happening is going to depend on what we do. And I will close by making the statement that the prophecy is, in the last days, every nation will turn against Israel except the United States. And right now, United States seems to be against not only Israel, but Jordan and Egypt and any of our countries we want to have peace. And so keep abreast of this. Watch what your congressmen are voting on. And realize these are real people. Joseph and his family, they're friends. And in February, I will be anxious to have Dr. Gutfeld come over, give you a presentation on the city of Lehi that he's the director of for the archaeology there. But anyway, you've been very, 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 very patient. Anybody have any final comments or questions? Sir.
In your opinion, what is the rationale for us supporting the Brotherhood or not supporting Egypt?
The question he's asking is, what's your rationale in supporting the Brotherhood? I have none. I can't see the United States doing it. We saw the logo. We saw what they're trying to do. That is the American flag, our symbol behind it. And the Brotherhood is designed for one thing, and that's to destabilize all the Arab countries. I've been there. I have seen what they're doing. I've been there dozens of times. I've been in the palace in Egypt. I've been in the palace with the royal family in Jordan. I'm good friends. I've got good friends with them there. And when they're watching what is happening, this is not just a bunch of Boy Scouts that are joining together to bring peace. They are radical extremists that are bringing all kinds of problems. And now they're after the king. Where do the Caspers go all the time, Julie? Morocco. They're now trying to take out the leadership of Morocco, for goodness sakes. And the king of Morocco is the one in charge of Temple Mountain. He's the one that the Jewish people have applied to, with some of the Arabs joining in, to get the building permit to build the temple there on Temple Square in that. Comment, sir, and then back to back.
I'm not doubting what you say about the Brotherhood. Weren't they duly elected?
I'm sorry, sir?
Wasn't the Brotherhood duly elected in Egypt?
No. The Brotherhood is a political, tyrannical group. They're not elected into office. They are a tyrannical group. Okay? Yes, ma'am. I better be very careful answering that when I'm recorded. The desire, as you saw, if you go on the internet and you call up the Brotherhood, you're going to see that shield over and over and over again. That shield, the number one enemy that they want to overcome is the United States. That's what that shield's all about. And so to say, are they an enemy? Yes. Have they gained as much power as they want yet? No. But I want to just warn you one more thing, and I know I've covered a bunch of stuff tonight, but I just warn you one more. Study NATO. Study NATO and the new treaties that have just been made in Chicago with NATO. NATO is no longer what you thought it was, you veterans. How many veterans do we have here? If you think that NATO is what NATO originally was established to do, go back and read President Obama's talk at the last meeting in Chicago with NATO when they turned all of the control of NATO over to the Soviet Union. And find out why the president is turning to the head of the Soviet Union to come into Syria to be in charge of the weapons of mass destruction. I don't know about you, but I just assumed the Soviet Union were not in charge of weapons of mass destruction.
The weapons of mass destruction, are they the same ones that came from Iraq to Syria, or are these different?
Many of them came from Iraq to Syria, and the Israelis gave the tracking through on 2 occasions. On one occasion, they brought a truckload of it towards Amman to destroy 80,000 people minimum in Amman to punish the king. But we caught it. Then they were sending 1.5 truckloads to the Vatican to kill the Pope and the people of the Vatican when they said that the Pope had insulted Muhammad. And they intercepted that one thanks to Israel. And we were told when all this was happening there wasn't anything that in existence. Now they're telling us that all the weapons of mass destruction are actually coming out of Korea. You'll say, that's interesting. What's Korea doing? Well, Korea is one that made them up. You'll have to think that one through too. But anyway, we're not getting in the press what we really ought to be watching. And when I was on the radio yesterday, an individual called up and challenged what I was saying and etc. And I apologize if I'm not teaching what is correct. But all you've got to do is go over. And I would love for some of you, if you want to go over in April. We'll go to Egypt and Jordan. We'll go over there. We'll go up and visit the refugee camps. We'll let you see it and feel it and sense it. See what's happening. And then we'll see whether or not you're getting the truth out of CNN. And then you start going a little bit different direction. Well, you've been very, very kind. Hope it's been worth it for you, and I'm so appreciative of them fixing up the building here. I look forward to the time we'll have more of the performers up on here, because that's the best thing of the program anyway, the young people coming up. But now we will say goodnight to those that have been watching on TV and thank them for being part of it. And then we'll have our final here, which will be a drawing. And we have taken some of your names, those that wanted to put your name in the hat, and we'll take out the name. And those that win, you can go back to the back and pick out any book that you want to have as our thank you for being here. Okay? And if you take the one that says you get a free Dairy Queen, that would probably be the one that most of you would want anyway. But come on up, and we thank you very, very much for your time being here.